Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And in today's episode, the Phils made their first main move of free agency. And they're adding to the bullpen. And I really like this move. I'll tell you why on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space here in Philadelphia. I've been on the radio for 5 years with 97.5 The Fanatic, talking all Philadelphia sports. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 years, and this is my third season as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure you're rating and reviewing if you're consuming this in podcast form. If you're checking out our YouTube, hit that subscribe button to the Locked On Phillies YouTube channel. That will get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's also the number one way to help us out here on Locked On Phillies. If you enjoy the content, it really helps me to continue to put out more good content. If you hit that subscribe button, that count keeps growing. So I appreciate that very much if anyone's going to do that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Phillies got their offseason started with a signing in the bullpen. So this came down yesterday. Now, we didn't get into it yesterday because it happened right as I was recording the episode. And also, that whole Juan Soto thing was kind of a big deal that we had to get into. By the way, if you want to see my thoughts on, or hear my thoughts, I should say, on the Juan Soto signing by the New York Mets, we're going to talk about that a bunch throughout the offseason. But my initial thoughts are in yesterday's episode, so you can go ahead and go check that out at your leisure. But the Phillies have made a move, and they've gone out and gotten Jordan Romano, the former closer of the Toronto Blue Jays. So we're going to talk about that here because I think this is a really smart, savvy move by Dave Dombrowski. We're also going to talk about a major deal that came down just before I sat down to record this podcast, where the Braves are losing some firepower in their starting rotation. And then we got to thank a Phillies legend. Or not thank, but congratulate a Phillies legend as Dick Allen is getting elected to the Hall of Fame. But let's start with this Jordan Romano conversation. Why? Well, first, who is he? And he is a 31-year-old reliever that has been an all-star multiple times in his career. Recently as well. He's a righty. He's a big dude. This guy is 6'5", 210, right? Big body reliever, throws hard, was a closer for the Toronto Blue Jays for the past 3 years, kind of. 2.5, like a quarter, maybe we'll call it, whatever the case may be. So in 2022, he was an all-star with Toronto out of the bullpen. In 2023, he was an all-star with Toronto out of the bullpen. In 2024, this past year, he was not. And he had a 6.59 ERA. And part of the reason why is he only threw 13.2 innings, 13 2/3 innings, because he had elbow issues. Now, not Tommy John elbow issues. He had some elbow impingement, right, which we've heard before with Phillies pitchers. There's just something weird going on in the elbow. He got a couple shots for it, didn't work. He got arthroscopic elbow surgery where they go in there and they clean it up and try and figure out what's going on with everything in there. And he was on the shelf for the rest of the year. So, okay, that's not ideal to have a guy that's coming in off of elbow surgery, and you're going to need to make sure he's healthy, and you're going to need to be careful with him the way that you use him. He's not on any type of pitch count or limit from anything that I've heard or read, but that's why the Phillies were able to get him on a one-year deal at around $8 million. Carlos Tevez is going to make significantly more than that on a longer-term deal. Jeff Hoffman's going to make significantly more than that on a longer-term deal. And this dude was a two-time All-Star with the Toronto Blue Jays. So now the Philadelphia Phillies get a guy on a prove-it contract, right? It's a one-year deal. So he's going to have to – and the reason he took a one-year deal is because nobody wanted to offer him long-term money with those elbow issues. But listen to some of these numbers, and you tell me if this is a guy that you would want in your bullpen. 2020, let's go through the amount of innings pitched. 14 2/3 innings pitched. Not much because of the shortened season. 1.23 ERA. 2021, 63 innings pitched. He had himself a 2.14 ERA. 2022, in 64 innings pitched, he had a 2.11 ERA his first All-Star season. In 2023, 59 innings pitched, 2.9 ERA. Listen, like the past 4 seasons that he hasn't been injured, so 20, 21, 22, and 23, and I know 2020, very small sample size, he's had a sub-3 ERA out of the pen of each of those. In 3 of them, he's had a sub-2.15 ERA, and this past year, you can kind of throw out the performance just because he was dealing with an injury. He couldn't throw. That's why they shut him down for the year. So those numbers are incredible. Remember when we went through like Matt Strahm and Jeff Hoffman's all-star seasons in 2024, and we're like, wow, these numbers, unbelievable. Low 2 ERAs. Where do you find the replacement for this if you're losing Jeff Hoffman or Carlos Estevez? Where do you find the replacement for that guy as a closer? You look at the save numbers, 23 for Romano in 2021, 36 for Romano in 2022, 36 for Romano in 2023, even 8 in 2024 with those issues in that ERA. Like, this dude's a bona fide great closer, an all-star level closer. And the Phillies have not yet said that they're looking for, like, that's the thing. They're looking for him to reprise his role as a closer. They haven't said this is our guy to end games. So maybe they'll still bring back Estevez, and you'll look at Jordan Romano as a guy that's an 8th inning guy, a 7th inning guy. They could do that. I think he would fit better as the closer of this team, and I'd rather him have that role. And there's a reason for that. But just like looking strictly at a guy that throws righty, by the way, big righty, throws hard, just has really good stuff, has good strikeout stuff. I mean, you look at some of his strikeout numbers, 85 in 2021 in 63 innings, 73 in 2022 in 64 innings, 72 in 2023 with 59 innings. If he throws like 60 innings, he's going to be in the 75 to 85 strikeout range. Guy got strikeout stuff. He's very, very good. He doesn't really walk too many guys. Walked 24 in 2023 and 21 in 2022. So he'll normally walk a guy maybe every 3 innings, it looks like, is about his number there. So 3 walks for 9. Not bad. You can get that down, but like, that's why he's an all-star caliber guy. I really love this move because you're taking a flyer on a high-risk, high-reward bullpen arm, and the Philadelphia Phillies seem to have been able to get the most out of their bullpen arms. So you now, if Hoffman doesn't come back, have just replaced him with another righty all-star caliber guy. Reload, right? We don't rebuild here. We reload. You hear that all the time from great organizations. The Philadelphia Phillies just reloaded their bullpen arms. Now, what I want to see them do with Romano, right? Here's the one thing that worries me about bringing in a 2-time all-star level closer from an American League team. Now, this one's not via the trade, but you could look at this. If I showed you the baseball reference page, right, and I showed you this deal, and I covered up all the personal information, right? It was just the numbers. This would look eerily similar to the Gregory Soto acquisition. Now, again, not a trade. This is a guy that you signed on a 1-year deal. If it doesn't work out, whatever. You eat the money. $8 million is a drop in the bucket for the Philadelphia Phillies. So it's not like they're hugely financially implicated by this move. But I think part of the issue with Gregory Soto when he was acquired by the Philadelphia Phillies was, one, I don't think he was ready for the market or the spotlight. I don't think he was ready to pitch for a team that wasn't the Detroit Tigers, who hadn't competed for anything while Soto was there. Now, the Blue Jays have been a little bit more competitive. And remember, Jordan Romano is doing this in the American League East with, 2022, 2023, Baltimore was good. The Yankees were a juggernaut. The Tampa Bay Rays had a good year in there. The Boston Red Sox are somewhat competitive. They've got good offensive players. Like, the AL East is not an easy division for a closer to go out there and put together those type of numbers. So you should feel really, 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 really good about Jordan Romano's ability, if he's healthy. It seems like the Phillies believe he's healthy, to be productive for the Philadelphia Phillies. I just worry that the other reason Gregory Soto wasn't good here was because he didn't get an established role as the closer. He came in and it's like, yeah, you were an all-star level closer multiple times in Detroit. We're not going to do that here. You're going to be kind of all over the place. This is why I like established roles for pitchers. Now, it's hard to establish his role right now because you don't know who else you're getting back. If you get Estevez back and you think Estevez is the better closer, go ahead and put him there, right? and then figure out where Romano goes. I just want there to be a little bit of consistency with how you use Jordan Romano in the bullpen. But this is I don't want to call it, I almost called it a home run signing, right? Which would be, I guess, an unlucky turn of phrase for a pitcher who's trying not to give up home runs. But this would be a home run signing if he is healthy, right? And that's the major question. But the Phillies feel that they are able to take advantage of this opportunity to bring in a guy that people don't want to pay this much or don't want to pay long term, so you can get him on a short term deal because of the injury and say, okay, if he's healthy, our upside's good. Again, high risk, high reward move to potentially vault this bullpen back to one of the best in baseball after losing two really, really good arms to start the offseason in free agency, or at least allowing those arms to go to free agency. Neither have been signed by any team yet, so you don't have to worry about that. If you want Carlos Estevez back, you're still looking at it and saying, okay, it is possible. So we'll see how the rest of this offseason plays out for the Phillies bullpen. This is an exceptional first move by Dave Dombrowski and the Phillies brass, and you should be excited about what he can bring to this team for 2025. Coming up next, you should also be excited about divisional opponents getting weaker. The Mets got significantly stronger when they signed Juan Soto, but they're not the only team in division. There's a team down south that just took a bit of a hit today when it comes to their ability to throw the baseball. We'll talk about that coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk FanDuel first, though, because you got to be ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and do so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just go ahead and visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So let's say you want to go on there and place that $5 bet on a crazy money line favorite, and you would win like 1 penny as your return. Well, normally you would, but you win that bet, you're going to get that 150. It's a no-brainer. So pick a huge favorite, get that 150, and then make some of those saucy bets that can get you a lot of money based on your winning. So there's a lot of great ways to bet with FanDuel. Go ahead and check them out. Moneyline, parlays, props, futures, all of these great things. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, so the Philadelphia Phillies watched the New York Mets sign Juan Soto to a 15-year, $765 million deal late Sunday night, and probably threw up in their mouth a little bit and said, man, that's gonna be tough to compete with, right? Now, we talked about Juan Soto yesterday. I don't think Juan Soto makes the New York Mets a juggernaut. He makes them a very good baseball team. The Phillies are also a very good baseball team. The Dodgers are also a very good baseball team. The Yankees still have potential to be a very good baseball team. I think there are other teams on the level of the New York Mets, right? The Dodgers clearly are standalone Tier 1A, and then there's a couple teams in Tier 1B, like the Phillies and the Yankees, and now the Mets have put themselves in that conversation. But it's not just Phillies-Mets. Remember, there are other teams in the division. The last season version of this podcast would have gone, it's not just Phillies, Braves. Remember, there are other teams in the division. Crazy things can happen if I was a smart man, but I didn't see it coming. The New York Mets and Atlanta Braves differing 2024 seasons. The Mets got hot in the middle of the season. They end up knocking the Phillies out. The Braves have a bunch of injuries and fall off the face of the earth and make the playoffs and get immediately smoked, right off the bat. So, yeah, I look at that and I say, okay, it would be dumb to overlook the Atlanta Braves and just say, oh, well, they missed the playoffs in 1 year. They had a down year due to injuries. All of a sudden, they're not part of the conversation in this division. They are. They're still one of your rivals. So you can't just focus on the New York Mets. I said yesterday, you have a war on two fronts now. Atlanta to the south, New York to the north, if you're the Philadelphia Phillies, and you just got a big battle victory against that southern side as Max Fried has made his decision in free agency. Now, there always seemed to be this assumption that Max Fried's time in Atlanta was over. But you never count out a guy like Alex Anthopoulos, who runs the operations down there for the Atlanta Braves and gives out all these witchcraft contracts of like, hey, we're going to pay Ronald Acuna Jr. 25 cents for the next 25 years, and he's going to play baseball for our team. Like, I don't know how he does it. So you never want to count that out, no matter whether it sounds like the player is interested in being back or not. But Max Fried is in agreement with the New York Yankees on an 8-year, $218 million contract pending a physical. Now, just an aside on the numbers, because 218 is nuts. It's the largest guarantee in baseball history for a lefty. So Max Fried just got the biggest left-handed pitcher contract in the history of baseball from the New York Yankees. Makes sense. Probably pretty easy to negotiate when you hear that Juan Soto deal and you say, hey, you got $760 million laying around that you're not using. Why don't you break off some of that for me? But this is good for the Philadelphia Phillies because Max Fried is now no longer in division. He's no longer in league. He's going to the American League, and he's with the Yankees, and he is a really, really good pitcher. And that's why the New York Yankees felt comfortable giving him that amount of money. That knocks down the Braves' ability to compete in the NL East. Pitching is at a premium. So let's just face value what happened the last 2.5 days, right? Juan Soto goes to the New York Mets. The Mets get significantly better offensively. Jordan Romano signs with the Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies bullpen gets significantly better if he's healthy, right? Big if. Does not equal the Soto trade. I would never try and compare them. I'm just saying, like, that's the Phillies went and added some pitching. The Braves lose some pitching, and Max Fried goes to the Yankees. So the Braves are at a net negative. The Phillies and Mets are at a net positive. The Phillies compared to the Mets are at a significant net negative, and the Braves compared to the Mets are getting blown out of the water. Now, it's early in free agency, and no one's going to do anything to equal the Juan Soto signing. Like, there's not another player out there like that unless Roki Sasaki comes to one of these teams, right, and ends up with the Phillies or ends up with the Braves. And obviously, I'd like for him to end up with the Phillies and not with the Atlanta Braves. But you should celebrate when you see a guy like Max Fried leaving the division. This dude is good. And to get him out of the NL East, well, it changes things because now the Braves rotation is like, well, they still have Spencer Strider, of course, but is he an injury-prone guy? Are you going to look at him like that for the rest of his career? Possibly. You look at, I don't know, A.J. Smith-Shawver down there, and is he a guy that they could trust for a long time? I mean, their starting rotation, Reynaldo Lopez is very good, but like, do you look at them as this juggernaut rotation, or do you look at them as, hey, we got some nice guys? Like, you lost a 2-time All-Star, a 3-time Gold Glove winner, a career ERA of 3.07. Like, and also, age-wise, only just, well, he's going to be 31 in January. So I read the date wrong. 30, turning 31 in January. He's got years still to go ahead and pitch at this level. Normally, your peak, again, as a pitcher, you're looking at, like, normally for baseball players, I'd say 28 to 32. For pitchers, I'd say probably like 28 to 34, maybe. You still got 3-4 more good years out of Max Fried. To see that he's doing that outside of the division in the NL East is good. Now, I don't think this is a Braves fall off, right? I don't think this is, wow, Atlanta, they're not going to be able to pitch. They're not going to be able to figure this out. To go ahead and compete in the NL East with a Juan Soto-led Mets team and a Bryce Harper-led Phillies team and a – who leads the Nationals and Marlins? I don't know. We'll figure that out. But anytime that you could see your path get easier, it's something that deserves celebrating. And the Philadelphia Phillies, after seeing their path get significantly harder today, saw their path get a little bit easier. And you know what's funny is I was actually hearing whispers that the Philadelphia Phillies were interested in Max Fried to potentially come in and pitch for their organization, which how awesome would that have been if the Phillies had poached Max Fried in free agency without the Braves re-signing him and he becomes a member of the Philadelphia Phillies alongside Wheeler and Nola and Suarez and Sanchez and Andrew Painter coming up at some point. Like, that would have been awesome. That didn't happen. I didn't really think it was too likely. Like, it wasn't like, oh, the Phillies are the favorite. It was, hey, they're kicking the tires on this guy. And if that source is true, right, if that rumor is true, that they at least were like, yeah, what's up with Max? Like, talked to his representative and said, hey, is he remotely interested? Like, what's the vibe here? It shows you that they are valuing starting pitching. Everything we've heard about Alec Boehm is that he could be potentially moved for a starting pitcher. Everything we've heard about what they're looking to do in free agency outside of the third base position. We just mentioned Alec Boehm, who could be on the move at any time. They're looking to do something with the starting rotation, it sounds like, or the bullpen. Like, this team is pitching focused to start, and it seems like they'll fill in the outfield gaps and a third base gap if that develops post Alec Boehm trade. But this is nice because you look at this as also, one other thing. Like, speaking of starting pitchers, by the way, I know I just said that like there's breaking news. There's not, but this just clicked in my head. Like, the Phillies acquiring Jordan Romano, signing him in free agency, makes it more likely that the Phillies would trade Alec Boehm for starting pitching, because you've just added to the bullpen. So I don't think you're going to do that. And then, like, trade Alec Boehm for a Devin Williams, for example, and just superpower the bullpen. Like, no, it seems more likely that if you added to the bullpen, you now add to the starting rotation. So we'll see. There's a lot of moving parts here and moving pieces, and that's why the baseball offseason is so interesting, because there's prospects that move in trades. There are draft changes. The first year, like, lottery happened, so we're going to recap that on tomorrow's episode. Like, there are major signings. The biggest contracts in the history of sports go down. Like, it's awesome. And the Philadelphia Phillies got themselves involved in it, and then the Braves lost the guy. So things are going pretty well to plan for the Philadelphia Phillies this offseason. Besides that whole little thing of, that 25-year-old superstar slugger that could kill you for the next 15 years being up 95 in New York. But we'll cross that bridge when the regular season rolls around. Coming up next, we've been looking forward a lot. Right? What's going to happen next season? Who's going to be on what team? What does 2025 have in store for the Philadelphia Phillies? But we need to look back, because there are congratulations in order for one Dick Allen, who finally got the call from the Hall. We'll talk about the Phillies legend coming up as we wrap up today's episode. All right, let's talk about the guy, Dick Allen. Played first, played third, played left, played way back in the day, born back in 1942. So he is, 78 at the time he died. He's been gone for a while, but he deserved this for sure. Like, this is probably, if your grandfather is a Philadelphia sports fan, Dick Allen, there's a good chance was his favorite player. It was unbelievable. He was Rookie of the Year. He won an MVP. He was a 7-time All-Star for the Philadelphia Phillies. His numbers are absolutely incredible. And he should have been a Hall of Famer way before this, right? It's been a long time coming. And this is why the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame has created this whole, veterans committee type of situation where they can bring in guys who don't get the vote via the Writers Association. You got to wait a while until you can be eligible for that, right? So it took Dick Allen longer than it should have. But you're just looking at a situation where this guy has always deserved being in, and it took him too long, but he got the call. Well, he didn't get the call, obviously, but his family got the call, and the Philadelphia Phillies got the call that Dick Allen was going to be honored as a member of the Pro Baseball Hall of Fame in Coopersville. Why am I Cooperstown? I'm an idiot. I can't speak right now. Dick Allen, his career numbers, if you're not familiar with this guy's work that he did, not just with the Phillies, but as a baseball player at the professional level, a career 58.7 WAR, which normally if you get to like 60, that's when you get in as a member voted by the Baseball Writers Association. He was just a little bit below it. Like 60 seems to be kind of the threshold for Hall of Fame induction for these big-time players. 351 career home runs, a career 292 batting average, 1,848 hits in 6,332 at-bats. I mean, he just absolutely put up numbers throughout his entire career. Now, you might look at that batting average and be a little bit more impressed than they were at the time, because now people bat 240 or 230, but 292 over the course of a career with those type of power numbers are still, super impressive. You just look at some of the seasons he had, and When he won Rookie of the Year in 1964, he came in 7th in the MVP voting. He was that good right from the jump. And then he rattled off 3 straight All-Star years with a 4th-place MVP finish in 1966. He won his MVP in 1972 as a member of the Chicago White Sox, so never got it here. But then like 3 more All-Star seasons in Chicago, including that MVP year. And then this weird All-Star season in St. Louis in 1970. But he played in Philadelphia for the first, 7 years of his career. And then he had 2 more in 1975 and 1976. He came back at the end of his career to make it an even 9 for the Phillies. Never spent more than 3 years anywhere else. So his biggest accomplishment was in Chicago. 4 of his All-Stars were not in this city, but his Rookie of the Year was here. His career started here. And when everything was all said and done, he came back here before spending 1 more year in Oakland. That's why he's a Philadelphia legend. I mean, he's a guy that just took care of business at the plate and was one of the calling cards of those like 1960s Philadelphia Phillies teams. So that's really great to see that he makes it. Like the more athletes that you can look at and say, this is a Hall of Famer, the more it raises the prestige of the franchise. Now, I don't think that there's like, for example, the Juan Soto wouldn't say, oh, well, Dick Allen made the Hall of Fame. Now I view the Phillies in a different light. I'm signing there with the team. It's not like that immediate. But what it is it's honoring players that deserve it and also helping build up the prestige of a franchise like the Philadelphia Phillies for having amazing players back in the day. And it's also recognizing where the sport has come from and guys in the past that deserve to get in. It gives me hope for guys like well, I'll just say, because I don't want to list out anyone specifically, because every player that's not in, someone has some like strong argument against, right? But it gives me hope. No, you know what? I'll list specific names. It gives me hope for guys like Ryan Howard and Chase Utley and Jimmy Rollins if they don't make it through on the Writers Association ballot, that maybe one day in the future they'll find their way in via this special veterans vote. Maybe they'll find their way in somewhere down the line that we can see. No. It shouldn't be too long, and Dick Allen should have been in significantly before this. But getting in is getting in, and he will always have a plaque in Cooperstown now, and that is something that is much deserved for the Philadelphia Phillies legend. So, again, if your grandfather is still around and was a Philadelphia sports fan, he was a Dick Allen fan. He liked the Philadelphia Phillies. He liked Dick Allen. That was a guy that was just a legend of that time for the Phillies. He was before Mike Schmidt. He was before Bryce Harper. He was before Chase Utley and Ryan Howard and Jimmy Rollins. He was the 1960s version of this guy for years here in Philadelphia. And now you get to go ahead and when you go visit the greatest baseball place on earth up there in upstate New York, you'll be able to look at his plaque on the wall. So I just wanted to take the time to talk about that and give him some time. I get comments all the time when I'm doing like the top Phillies by number. We'll do like a numbered countdown when we get closer to the season, like the top Phillies by every jersey number. And there's always people in the comments who are like, you forgot about this guy who played in 1903 and my great-great-grandfather told me he was the greatest player that ever lived. And I was just like, guys, I wasn't around. I was born in 94. I can't really speak to guys that played in the 30s and 40s and 50s the same way. But when you have a legend like Dick Allen, and again, obviously, I never saw Dick Allen play, and I'm not as familiar of his game as a lot of people in this fan base who are on the older side are. But I want to show that respect, and everybody should show that respect to a guy who is now another Hall of Famer for the Philadelphia Phillies. It doesn't happen often, right? You look at this year's team, and Bryce Harper could be a Hall of Famer. Zach Wheeler could be a Hall of Famer. Trey Turner could be a Hall of Famer, I guess. Dave Dombrowski is a Hall of Fame executive, but it won't necessarily be for his time in Philly. I mean, there's very few chances to run into guys that are Hall of Fame caliber players. A lot of Hall of very good, but to get that call from the Hall or to be elected posthumously, it's a great honor for Dick Allen and for the Phillies organization, and much deserved, and one that I wanted to give its time on this podcast. So there you have it. Congratulations to Dick Allen, one of the newest members of the Baseball Hall of Fame up in Cooperstown. I don't know where Coopersville even came from. Cooperstown, New York, at the Baseball Hall of Fame. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Now, while I was recording this episode, I got an interesting notification about a Rob Thompson, Alec Bohm conversation that apparently happened. And a lot of trade rumors have been circulating about Alec Bohm. So we're going to discuss what was reportedly said on tomorrow's episode. So we're going to get into that. And we're also going to get back to our potential free agent signings because, man, I haven't gotten through them fast enough, clearly. Jordan Romano was not somebody that we had gotten to on a list yet, and he's already a Philadelphia Phillies. So we got to step up our gear. We'll get into that on tomorrow's episode, but thank you so much for joining us. We are, once again, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribe to the YouTube, all that great stuff that helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. And I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.